Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. May I have your attention, please?
You know, when I was still deciding whether or not to do the film, Stacy Snyder at Universal told me that not only had Russell expressed interest over the years in this project, but that Renée Zellweger had always wanted to play May Braddock. And I thought that was just brilliant. I mean, I thought the two of them creating these people, not only, you know, is it a nice fit when you actually look at the photographs of the real Jim and May, but, you know, I had to make this movie, you know, about this family in the Depression. This boxer, Jim Braddock, his wife, May, played by Renée Zellweger, Russell playing Jim. I couldn't let that opportunity go by.
The beat-to-beat of this story is fantastic. You couldn't make this up, you know, and it play out like this, you know. And the fact that it was real and it actually happened, this change of fortune, had actually happened in somebody's life. These things to me made it, you know, very important to tell the story.
It's a tremendous family story. You know, the reason that he was called the Cinderella Man, dubbed that by Damon Runyon at the time, was that he in fact was living out a kind of a fairy tale. But it's not that sort of sugar-coated fairy tale, it's more of a Grimm's fairy tale. It's tough to be inside that fairy tale.
Playing in boxing, you've got a physical requirement, and you know you're going to have to get yourself fit just to get through the shooting days. You know, regardless of the point of actually making your body look like a boxer's body.
He didn't just get himself in boxing shape. I mean, he got himself in the kind of fitness that was absolutely appropriate for the period. And Angelo Dundee gave him the kind of training regimen that was more in keeping with what fighters were doing then.
The hardest thing with the shoot is not necessarily the training beforehand. It's once you actually start filming and you're doing these long hours, but you still got to do the same level of training as well, you know. And we would cycle into the boxing, so there wasn't ever really a period of time during the film where I could, you know, fully relax. But I tell you what, I had fun on this movie every day. Every single day I was enjoying myself. The thing about Braddock's life, for me, what made it important was not necessarily the fact that he became the heavyweight champion. It's what he did with that, you know, and what didn't change. You know, he was still so in love with his wife, and he'd watched his kids grow up, and he'd watched his kids have kids, you know. I mean, he just remained a good, solid man, you know. And to me, that was the really important thing.
I come from a family of 5 boys and 2 girls, and 2 brothers before me, boxers, amateurs. And I liked sports, and naturally I drifted into boxing.
And I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, history is in the making tonight. Bear again shoots his right hand to the side of Braddock's jaw. Again, Bear's right hand finds Braddock's jaw, and an uppercut by Bear to Braddock ends the contest. The 2 boys put their arms around each other, and if this decision goes to Mr. Braddock, it will be the greatest story in pugilism.
I never realized who my father was, or that he was a heavyweight champ of the world, until I was quite old, 12 or somewhere around there. But just mom and dad, and that was it. I believe I found out probably from some kids outside of the family, going to school, and you know, like some kids would say, "Oh, your father was a bum." You'd ask why, and they say, "Well, he couldn't fight for anything." And then I found out he was a fighter, and then found out that he was heavyweight champ of the world. I guess it really didn't impress me till later years, maybe like 14, 15, until you realize what it was. When you first heard it, it was just that's what he was. And I really didn't know that much about it, because we didn't follow boxing, I guess, as you would today, or sport, or professional football, or something. But then after I realized what it was, I think, oh, he really did something.
The winner and new heavyweight champion.
He had bought a taxi company and invested in stock. When the crash came, he lost everything. And of course, work was very hard to find, and fights were very few, far between. So it was a very, very hard time for them, which I never realized, of course, until years later.
But things were a little rough. There was, I guess, with everybody. I was on welfare, yes, I was in 32, 33. And, well, I had 3 kids and a wife I had to support.
I know he felt extremely bad about going on relief. He didn't want to do it, but he said he had no choice, that there wasn't any money around and no milk for the kids, so.
I think that Russell feels a lot of things about a lot of subjects. and he's living a big, full life. And in some ways, that can be exhausting, and it has its ups and downs. But he can understand a guy like Braddock. He's not just intellectualizing Jim Braddock. He wanted to play Jim Braddock because, you know, there was a part of him that related to that character. And so sure, that's, you know, some of that's technique, some of it's talent, he's an artist, but there's also this wide range of feeling that Russell has access to. And I think it's what makes him such an extraordinary screen actor and a great artist.
You know, when you have Russell Crowe already set for your movie and you have Ron Howard directing your movie, it is such an actor magnet. You know, it just raises the bar so much that it really makes my job frighteningly easy. I shouldn't admit that. The next part to cast is Russell's wife, and so we put together a very short list of women who we felt like that period in time and had that kind, you know, who are believable. There's some people who have a very contemporary feel, and even when you imagine them in makeup, they don't feel like they're going to fit into the period. So there was a short list, and Ron was really interested in working with Renée, and she was available, and she liked the part. And so that went really quickly.
I knew that Renée was somebody who would spare nothing in trying to bring a character like that to the screen with just the utmost authenticity and strength. And yet, she's, you know, she lights up a room when she walks in it as a person, and she does the same thing on screen. And she's so detailed and so utterly human. Renée has this absolute honesty and this willingness, you know, to just ignore all concerns of vanity and just create a truthful character.
I feel a tremendous responsibility to represent her correctly, her idiosyncrasies and the things she liked, the way she would dress herself, the way she wore her hair. I mean, just little things that would be the truth of who she is. But more importantly, it's her essence that I want to capture honestly. May is what motivates him. She is his purpose, so to speak. You know, she is his support system. And at the same time, he doesn't want to fail her. She and his family are what inspire him to want to be a champion. And they're what keep him hanging on. She's a very strong woman in a way that I think was probably a bit unconventional in terms of family dynamics at that time. She definitely had opinions, and she voiced them.
Jim and the girl who stood by him through thick and thin, their troubles are over.
Oh, May, it's a great satisfaction after 9 years to find myself up where I always wanted to be. And it looks like those lean days we had for the last 2 or 3 years are gone forever.
Ever see Jim fight, Mrs. Braddock?
Oh, I saw him fight once. That was only one round, and I ran out of the place screaming.
Why did you do that?
Well, I felt that every time Jim got punched, I was getting punched also, and I couldn't take it.
No boxing in the house! No boxing out of the house, all right? No boxing, period. You're going to stay in school, and then you're going to go to college, and you're going to have professions, because you're not going to have your skull smashed in, too. Is that clear?
She's very strong. She wants to keep her family together. She wants to back her man. But at the same time, she holds the secret, and she keeps it the secret, that she's just not sure that her husband's that good a boxer and could become disabled in the ring. And she's a very proud woman as well.
Very strong woman, but unconditionally supportive of him. That was part of what I love so much about this story, is that it always went back to their connection. No matter what challenges they were trying to make it through, it always came back to their love for each other.
Renée loved the themes. She loved what it said about family, the power of love, the unity of a marriage, the possibilities under the most dire circumstances, and its ability to, you know, to save themselves and save their children.
When you're dealing with historical, actual people, you have some obligation to try to have the actors resemble the real people. And Joe Gould was this little tiny feisty guy, and Jim Braddock was this big tough Irish guy. they were like Mutt and Jeff. And we really wanted to have that dynamic between the two actors.
Looks like this combination has clicked after 9 years.
Right.
You're telling me?
Look at this. Looks like the whole world is happy about it, too. And there's a trunk full of these in the other room.
You drove all the way out here to talk about the weather?
Maybe I was in the neighborhood. Did you ever think of that? A little fresh air.
I've liked Paul and his performances, for several years. I think he's really emerged. And I had a chance I just wanted to meet him. I was meeting a lot of different actors. Some people were auditioning. Some good people were giving some great auditions. But I just had this feeling about Paul. And he, like Russell and Renée, just thought it was a great story and a strong script. And, he just wanted to play Joe Gould.
There's not a whole lot about him out there. I mean, there is anything that there is about him is only in connection with Braddock. There was a little bit of him on film, which was interesting to watch. I mean, I usually will look at the person to see if there's anything that seems interesting about them physically or something. And I mean, I tried to look a little bit like him, and I heard what he sounded like a little bit.
Just give him a few, leave him one.
You want to sign my name for me, too?
Well, at least then they can read it.
Joe Gould's a fascinating guy. Very New York, very street, very tough. Not diminutive, but, high octane. And everybody spoke highly of him, mostly because he was unbelievably, doggedly dedicated to helping his friend Jim Braddock. And they were a real odd couple, but people respected them, they respected their friendship and what came of that friendship. So there were these great scenes that had been written for Giamatti playing Joe Gould. Great things to say, great dialogue, and it was terrific, and that was the easy part. What was hard was the boxing.
I heard that Angelo Dundee was going to be around, and first of all, I was grateful because I knew he was going to be able to tell me what the hell to do. I mean, I went to some gyms and hung around and did all that kind of stuff, but he was invaluable. I mean, he supplied me with everything, all the knowledge and phrases and everything about the world of boxing.
Keep him in front of you, cut him off, and keep moving with the guy, all right? And let go with the punches, hit him. He ain't gonna like it.
Trainer-fighter thing is in the corner is incredibly important, and also, I mean, you have 60 seconds to get a point across to a guy who's been getting hit in the head, like, repeatedly. So you have to be really clear.
There were all these placeholders in the script, which were sort of, watch your left, Jim, bob and weave, Jim, because the idea was we're going to all together learn about the boxing and find out what he should be saying. And Angelo Dundee and Paul together began to help take the Joe Gould character and make him boxing savvy, give him smart, tough-minded things to say.
Inside out. Beat him from the inside out!
It was really fun to do, and a kind of a high wire act for Paul, because we worked through some of it in rehearsal, but a lot of it fell to sort of just cooking it up on the day.
Angelo plays the cut man in the corner, so he was literally right next to me, so I could turn to him and say, what should I say here? They wanted to give a lot of the fights a different level of realism, where you'd actually hear me talking about something in the corner to Jim, to Russell, and then you'd actually see him implement it in the fight.
Try 2 legs. Give him 2 legs. Pop, pop. Double it up. How about it? Up. What the hell are you doing? Let's go. 9.
It offers a lot of insight to the viewer to follow Joe and then see what Jim does or does not do, with Gould's coaching.
Now!
Max! Hey, a little bit of it. Jim Braddock just beat Lasky. They made him the #1 contender.
Casting Max Baer was really the toughest bit of casting, and we wanted a big, burly guy. And I had all of these photographs of the real people, and when you look at Max Baer, he was built like a redwood tree. And finding an actor who had that physicality was really difficult, And when I finally stumbled across Craig Bierko, I was just thrilled. And even though he wasn't a boxer, he's athletic and really, understood the physicality of playing a boxer.
Jane Jenkins just kept saying, I think Craig Bierko is going to be your guy. So I met Craig, and it's not that he's necessarily played this kind of a guy before, but I felt like that he would have sort of the you know, the sort of the charm and the big laugh and this bit of the sophistication that Max Baer actually had, the social sophistication, you know, along with the intensity and the power to provide a real threat, a real palpable sort of, you know, danger to Jim Braddock.
The Irish have been waiting for a heavyweight champion again for a long time, and I think I can oblige him with this right hand of mine when I meet Max Baer on the 13th of June.
I've never played a real person before, and so I was excited about that. I got as much footage on Baer as there were a few interviews, not a lot, but all told, I probably had under 5 minutes of him actually talking.
Hello, everyone. I think I'm in great shape. In fact, I know I am, and I hope that I win tonight. I want to wish Jimmy all the luck in the world, no matter who wins. I hope we can still be friends. Thanks.
And the thing that I realized is that he's very flamboyant. They actually tried to make Max Baer into a movie star. And he was, you know, real striking guy, very clever and funny and dashing. There was one interview where it was after the Braddock Baer fight, and he's just got mounds of wounds the next day. He's got a mountain of pain on his face. And he's all swollen, and the guy says,
Maxie, how did you get that eye?
I never got touched in the fight. I'm going out, and I walk into my dressing room, and look at I bumped my eye.
He had this show-busy kind of flighty champagne bubble air about him. When I got the part, they hooked me up with Hector Roca, who Angelo Dundee recommended. And Hector is one of the great trainers. And every day, 7 o'clock, I met Hector down at Gleason's gym, legendary Gleason's gym, and he taught me the fundamentals, I guess within a month, which, you know, you really can't learn to box in under 2 years. He had 3 months with me. So he taught me as many of the fundamentals as we could. I worked very hard, 6 days a week, 3 hours a day. And he wanted to give me as much of the heart of a boxer as possible.
He worked so hard. He was training in New York with professional fighters, sparring with them, you know, getting himself fit. He went on his own journey, and he had a little less supervision, actually, in getting ready. But he was incredibly disciplined and got himself there. I'd met Bruce a number of times, but never really had the opportunity to direct him. And he seemed a great fit for Johnston. And those days, a couple of really terrific scenes between Russell, Paul Giamatti, and Bruce McGill, and you know, really a director's dream.
You know, you want to give him all the colors that your character can have, but the scenes later in the movie, it's very metered, cool business. It's all about business. And so early on, actually the first thing I shot, where I'm revoking his license, it wasn't written this way, but I just exploded at Paul Giamatti, who plays his manager. And improvisationally, he said something that set my guy off.
Face, he hardly gets a punch in anymore. Fights being stopped by referees. He's pathetic. Fights like that keep people away.
We're revoking his license, Joe. There's a situation where he's with the king, and he's a schmuck. Madison Square Garden was the venue, and he was the matchmaker. And if you didn't meet his approval, you didn't fight. He was one of the great promoters. He'd say anything about his fighter. He'd make up any story to get crowds to follow him. You know, they all did. They all did. And Joe, who's Braddock's manager and trainer, did the same thing. You know, it was all selling. It's selling because it's, you know, it's an athletic endeavor, but it's showbiz.
And come on, don't be foolish. We both know the name of this game. And it sure as hell ain't pugilism.
He's a terrific actor, and I've never seen him turn in a bad performance. I think he's one of the treasures of character actors that hold up and support film. Those are the real gems when you find brilliant character actors who can sort of morph into anything that you need them.
I'll get cold beer. Just the water for me, Quincy.
Mike's a guy who's really had the biggest fall, I think, out of anyone in the movie, because he was a stockbroker on Wall Street, and then the crash happened, so he's gone from having pretty much everything to nothing. And I think he just finds that very hard to cope with. I don't think he has faith in the system or faith in, you know, the leaders of the country or any faith in himself whatsoever.
Screw FDR. FDR, Hoover, they're all the same. You know, I come home one day, stand in my living room, and between the mortgage, the market, and this damn lawyer that was supposed to be working for me, it stopped being mine. It all stopped being mine.
He was the one character who wasn't based on a real person, and he served as kind of an amalgamation of a lot of different people and kind of the chorus or the conscience of the time period and the voice of the Depression, as it were. Usually, because I've worked with Ron so much, there's a clear vision going in of we want this kind of a feeling. But he didn't really have a clear vision, so we were sort of all over the map. He just wanted somebody interesting who's going to bring some life of his own and some humanity of his own to this character.
Paddy himself had a great sense of the character and that frustration with financial struggles. And in his own family, there was this feeling that there had been struggle and these kind of ups and downs. And he's a great guy and, you know, incredibly affable, but there's also, you know, a little edge there and a kind of strength. It's not really easy for Paddy to access that. It's not pleasant for him.
It's about that kind of shame that you feel when you can't provide for your family. So the fact that his children are having to share their birthday with other kids because the families can't afford to do it individually, that's another tough thing. You know, me as a man now, if that happened with my son, I'd find that very, very hard to cope with if we had nothing, and because you want to provide for your family.
And then playing Paddy's wife in the film is Rosemary DeWitt. Her grandfather is Jim Braddock. Jane Jenkins, you know, heard about Rosemary and said, well, you might want to meet her. And she came in and auditioned, and it's an important supporting role, but it's only a few scenes. But emotionally, her character is enduring a lot. And she just knocked us out in her audition and absolutely won the role. So I met her because she was in the bloodline, but I cast her because of a great audition. She was a terrific resource, and at one point volunteered to us a few letters that she had access to of her grandfather Jim writing to May. And it was really interesting because some of the letters were shortly after their marriage when things were going great, and then others were really at the sort of the peak of their most distressed times. And it was really moving to understand how badly he felt about his inability to protect his family and live up to, you know, what he thought was kind of the promise he'd made to his wife. You know, May was always there, always with him, but he just never wanted to take that for granted. And it's when I shared those letters with Russell, I think they really further defined the nature of Braddock's heart, his spirit, what made him tick.
You know, you have a brilliant actor like Russell, but he needs those strong actors like Paul Giamatti and Bruce McGill and Paddy to play against so that the level of everybody's ability rises when you have actors of that quality and that level who are all really deeply talented and brilliant actors. It becomes sort of a sparring match between them, and you rise to the level of the person that you're working with.
When you have together these fantastic ensemble casts, quite frankly, as a director, what you really do is try to stay out of their way. And you try to create an environment where they can follow their instincts and excel. And you're more there to provide a support system, to be a safety net, to encourage and solve problems. And once in a while, sure, everybody can use a little bit of guidance. But it's not about having to pull a performance out of a talent like Renée Zellweger or Russell Crowe. It's about capturing everything that they have to offer.